So I'm just hanging out here in the car riding line waiting to pick up my daughter from school, so I figured I would kick off this series of videos all about the basics of Final Cut Pro. In this first video, we're going to talk about the interface of Final Cut Pro. We're going to talk about how to get around, how to navigate, how to do some basic editing in here. So just some of the very basic introductory stuff about Final Cut Pro. So I hope that you're excited to get started. Let's dive in. Now, the first thing we have to do is open up Final Cut Pro. So we're just going to choose that from our menu. Now, it's by default going to create an untitled library for you in the beginning, and that library is going to be stored in your Movies folder inside of your Home folder on your Mac. Now, we can open and close and create new libraries anytime we want. And so if you wanted to just close this default library, you could go up to File and you could say Close Library Untitled, and it would close that library, and then you could create a new one. So if we close that, we'll go up to File, and then we're going to choose New Library, like this. And we're just going to call this Learn FCP. That'll be our Learn Final Cut Pro project. So we're essentially going to create a library that we're going to use now to learn the interface of Final Cut Pro. And now that we've created a library, let's talk about the different parts of Final Cut Pro. Let me just give you a quick overview of the interface here, and then we'll start to dive into each part individually. Over here on the left, we have what's called the browser. Now, the browser is made up of two different parts. There's the sidebar of the browser, and there's the browser itself, which houses all of the different parts of the browser. Over here in the center, we have the viewer. Now, the viewer is essentially going to be our window into the video that we're creating. So it's where we're going to be able to see the actual results. Over here on the right, we have the inspector, and the inspector is where we're going to be able to set all of the various properties for the different elements in our video. And finally, down here at the bottom, this is where we're going to have our magnetic timeline. This is where we're going to actually be able to create video, and we're going to be able to edit the video and make all of the different changes to the video that we want. Now, in order to really understand this, we're going to need to dive in piece by piece. So over here on the left, we have our sidebar. Now, like I said, our sidebar is where our actual library has been created. You can see that our library here is called Learn FCP. Now, inside of your library, you're going to have a couple of things. You will have a Smart Collections, and this is essentially just a way to filter the media that's inside of your project here, and you can filter it by these different Smart Collections. Now, the default ones that are built in, you can filter by all video, you can filter by audio only, by favorites, projects, stills. There's a bunch of different ways that you can filter here. But you can also create Smart Collections. So if you right click on that and you go to New Smart Collection, you'll be able to actually create a new Smart Collection here. And then if you double click on it, you can then set some different parameters to make it sort by the certain ways that you want to. Now, I'm not going to dive deeply into how to create Smart Collections and all of the different ways that you can use it, but just know that this is here and it's a super useful way to help you organize the actual files in your project. Now, the next thing that's created down here is what's called an event. An event is a way for you to kind of break up your actual project into different parts. Now, you can see that by default, Final Cut Pro gives the name of an event a date. And the date is specifically like the day that you are doing the work. Now, I think the way that Apple intended this was that an event was going to be each of your day of shooting. So you store all of your different videos for each of the different days, but people have kind of adapted this over the years and they've changed this into making folders for video, for audio, for images. And so some people will use events as if they are kind of the top category folders of their project. For me, I treat an event as if it is a day of filming. So I put any of my files in here that I'm going to use from a specific day in this event. And then I will use the next piece of what I'm about to talk about to help organize and sort that. Inside of an event, you can create something that's called a keyword collection. Now, you can do that a couple of ways. You can either right-click on it and go to New Keyword Collection. And I'm going to give this keyword collection a new name, and we'll call it Video. So you can right-click to create them, or if you look here, you can also do Command-Shift-K. So if you're down here in your keyword collections, you can do Command-Shift-K, and that will create a new one, and we can just make one for audio as well. And the way I use keyword collections is I use them as the mechanism through which I sort the media. So I treat the event as the main folder that's going to house the different files for that day. And then I create keyword collections that allow me to actually sort the media and apply those tags to the media so that when I click on these, I get different kinds of media. Adding media to an event over here is pretty easy. You just click Import Media, and it will open up your actual files on your folder, and you can find media that you want. So I'm just going to select these 4 different video clips, and I'm going to import them. And now you can see that I have opened them when I had this keyword collection selected. So if I click on audio, now they're not showing because those videos now have this video keyword applied to them, and it's making it so that I can sort my videos and my audios by these keyword collections. So if I wanted to, I could select audio over here and I could go to import, and I'll grab this audio file here and I'll just import that. And you can see now if I choose audio, I get the audio file because I had that tagged. If I choose video, I get my videos. And so these keyword collections are a really good way to help kind of sort the different media that you have in your actual events. You can create as many events and as many keyword collections that you want. You can also create the smart collections here, as many as you want. And so this is just kind of the way that Final Cut Pro organizes all of the different files inside of your project. Now, the first step that you would probably do in a project is you would want to kind of organize your video up here, right? And so some cool ways that you can do that in Final Cut Pro, you can actually choose whether you want to reject a clip or you want to favor a clip, and then you can kind of sort and organize that using this up here. So for example, if I wanted to go through and decide which of these videos were my favorites, I could click on the video clip, and then if I hit the F key, you can see that it adds this green line at the top of it, and now I have marked this video as a favorite. I can also click on one that I don't want, so I'm kind of going through my video clips here, and I choose, okay, I don't really want this one. I can hit the delete key, and what that does is it marks it as rejected, okay? And so now I have a favorited video, I have a rejected video, one that I'm not going to use in my actual project, and then I can, let's say I want to do a range, I can put my mouse over top of a video, I can hit my I key and that will select an in point for that. I can go over a little further, I can hit the O key and that will select an out point, and now I've only selected a range in here, and I'm going to favorite that particular range by hitting the F key, and you can see that the green line now is only within that range. And if I go up here to the top now, I can filter my actual media here by those specific clips. So if I only want to see the rejected, I can come down here and click on rejected, and that will just show me the ones that I've rejected. I can choose favorites. That will just show me the ones I've favorited. If I click on unused, it'll show me any of the ones that aren't added to the timeline, and I'll show you a timeline in a second. But now I can actually kind of filter through and find the different ones. So if I don't want to see the rejected ones, I could click on hide rejected. And there's a bunch of different things that you can do to filter your actual media up here. And let's say that I want to unmark all of these and I don't want to actually have them kind of either rejected or favorited. I can just select them all. I can go up here to the mark menu and then I can unrate them, and it will take away all of the favorites and rejected and all of that. Or if I undo that, I can also just select them all and I can hit the U key, and that will actually remove that as well. Now, another cool thing we can do over here in the browser is we can toggle between what's called Filmstrip mode and list mode. By default, media is added to the browser in Filmstrip mode, which is this kind of strip here where you can see like an actual strip of the video. However, I can also toggle to what's called list mode. So if I hit this button up here, that's going to take me into list mode, and I can actually see all of my different videos in a list here, and then I can kind of go through and choose in points and out points. Like, let's say I want to start like about here, I'll hit an I key. I want it to end about here, I'll hit the O key. And so this is the list view. And some people like this because it kind of gives them a little bit more control and allows them to see the actual video clip a little better. But I think that you'll find a use case as you kind of jump back and forth between these where sometimes it's useful in one mode and sometimes it's useful in another. So it's just nice to have this little toggle where you can kind of jump between modes. Now, we also have the ability to kind of change the way that the clips look. And so up here in our list appearance, we can change the size of the clips, big and small. We can change the duration that we're showing. So if we kind of adjust this, we're only showing 10 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, like we're just showing a certain size of the clip. We can group them by specific things. We can sort them by specific things. We can decide whether the waveform is showing or not. We can decide whether there's continuous playback and it just continues. And we can decide whether we're showing hidden clips. So these are just some really cool ways to be able to kind of organize and structure your media over here to make it easier for you to work with. And of course, we have the ability to search for any of the media. So we can use search words in here to find our media. We can look for camel, and that will use the metadata of the clip and the name and the description of the clip, and it will be able to sort using an actual search here. So it's really cool, really powerful search there. So that's another really useful feature inside of the browser here. Now there's a few different tabs up here that allow us to get some different things. This first tab is our library, right? This is the organizational structure of our project here. But we also have the ability to get media from our computer. We can go get our photos. We can go get our music. We can open up Apple TV and find clips from there. We can grab sound effects from our computer, and Final Cut Pro comes with a whole bunch of different sound effects, so you can kind of go on there and grab them from your computer. And also we have this tab here for our titles and our generators. Now Final Cut Pro comes with a bunch of titles and generators, and so you can just kind of dive in here, and if you want to go through different titles, this is where you'll find them. These are the different generators. Titles and generators could be a video in and of themselves, so I'm not going to go into deep explanation here, but this is where you would find all of the different titles and generators. And then finally, whenever you're working in Final Cut Pro, you are going to create what's called a project. Now, it's a little confusing because in my mind, the project is actually the library. That's the container that's holding everything. But in the context of Final Cut Pro, a project is actually a timeline. Now, if you've worked in other video editors, then you should think of a project as a timeline. So if we click on this new project button here, this is going to allow us to create a new timeline. And so I'm just going to name this timeline to make it less confusing. And in here, you can choose the different properties for your actual project. So we can say what the event is, and that's going to be our event over here. We can set the starting time code. We can set the video. Let's say in this one, we're just going to make it 1080p. You can set the resolution, you can set the rate, you can set how it renders, audio, etc. You can set all of the important video preferences here. And then if we click OK, we now have a timeline here, okay? And this timeline is available to us because we have this project up here. And so I'm going to create a new keyword collection here, and I'm going to call this projects, okay? And then I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to drag this project onto that keyword collection. And so now this project has the keyword of projects, and so I can sort by that as well as a keyword collection. So now that we've covered everything there is in the browser here, let's jump over here to the viewer for a second. First of all, up at the top of the viewer, you're going to see now everything about the video. The video's in 4K. It was filmed in 25 frames per second. It gives us the actual title of the video here. It tells you how far it's zoomed in. So like for now, it's zoomed in 25%. We could change that to fit, and it would fit the actual video inside of our viewer. So this is kind of handy if you want to zoom in and out. So like you want to zoom to 200. Hit 200, right? So we'll just go back to fit so you can see the whole video. Over here, you have a view menu. This allows you to kind of add some scopes. So if you clicked on this, it would show you video scopes here, and you could kind of change them, mess around with them. You can change them to whatever you want, any kind of different scopes that you need here, okay? And so we're going to hide those, but let's say we wanted to see different angles, we wanted to see our 360 viewer, all of that stuff's available over here. You can also change the quality. So if you've got a really good computer and it's not going to struggle, then you probably want to work in better quality. But if you're noticing that your video is lagging and having issues, you might want to switch it over to better performance here. It also allows you to play back media from specific places. You can do proxy preferred, you can do proxy only, you can set it so that it's playing optimized original video. All of these settings are here. You can adjust the different channels, look at different parts of the actual screen. There's a bunch of different viewer settings here that kind of allow you to make the display the way you want it and to have it function the way you want it. Now, to show you some of the tools down here, I'm actually going to just throw a clip in the timeline here, okay, just so you can see this. If you click on your actual video clip here and you click over here on this is called the transform tool. Now, the transform tool allows us to either move it around, move the video around, or we can actually scale the video up and down like that. I'm just going to keep resetting it so you can see, or we can rotate the actual video like this. So it's the tool that allows us to kind of move, scale, and rotate our image without having to do it with the sliders over here. So it's super useful to use the transform tool when you want to be able to kind of zoom in, you want to kind of scale it up, you want to move the image around. So the transform tool is where you would go to do that. The next available tool in here is the crop tool. And if you click on this, you have a few different options. You have the trim, which allows you to kind of trim and crop your image the way you want. You also have the crop button here, which allows you to actually crop it kind of in its original shape, but kind of anywhere you want on the screen, you can crop it. Or you have the Ken Burns option, which is essentially setting the beginning point and the end point, and then the actual clip will animate between those points. So if we set a start point and we set an end point and we were to play through this clip, it would start zoomed in to this space, and over the course of the entire clip, it would zoom back out to here. Now, the next thing we have in here is our distort option, and the distort option is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to kind of distort the video in any way. Using these different handles, you can kind of move it around and distort the video any way you want. So those are the main transforming and distortion tools that we have. And then over here we have some enhancement tools. And if you click on this, you can enhance the light and the color. You can enhance the balance, the match, the color inspector. We can also add a magnetic mask from here. So this right here is where we would add all of these different enhancement features. And then finally over here you have the retiming option. So if you click on this, you have the ability to speed up your video, slow it down. You can kind of make any timing adjustments to your video. You can do that in this menu here. And then we have our play button. If I click on that, it's going to actually play the video. And then over here, we have our time, and this is going to show us what actual time we're at in the video. And so if you were to scrub the playhead through over here, you can see that it would show us on here where our time was and what time we were in the video. Now this right here is the actual volume. Okay, it's going to show you the volume for the clip. So I just kind of threw some audio down here in the bottom. You can see if I play through this, it's actually going to show the volume that's happening. And if I click on it, you can get a bigger version over here on the right. And then finally down here in the bottom of the viewer, we have the full screen option. And if you click on that, it will make your video full screen so you can see the video in all its glory, and you can kind of double check your work and make sure you're doing it effectively. And now jumping over here to the inspector, you can see this is where we can actually manage all of the different properties for our video. Now, if you've clicked on a video clip, let's say you're on a video clip in the timeline, you're going to get video options, which is this little film strip over here. And that would allow you to do your different transforms, your crops, your distorts. You can do all of those different things. And if you have effects applied or anything video related is going to show up in here. So these are where the properties for your video live. You can also adjust properties for color. If you click on the color over here, you have some various options. If you hit this little drop down over here, you can see you have color boards, color wheels, color curves. You can adjust the hue saturation curve, or you can do color adjustments. By default here, mine is set to show color wheels, but you can change that if you go up to Final Cut Pro and you go to the settings, and then you look at general, you can see over here, you can choose for color correction, what is going to be your default. By default, I believe it is the color board that starts off in Final Cut Pro, but you can change it to whatever you want. I find the color wheels just an easier way to work with color correction, so those are what I have for default. And since we're over here and we have this open, this is where you would kind of change any of your main settings for Final Cut Pro. So if you want to just kind of open that up and play around, you can change your general settings here. You can change settings for editing. You can change settings for playback and for import and for destination. So you can kind of dive into these different settings here to see what's available to you. Now, another useful thing here is you have the info inspector. The info inspector gives you information about the clip. It gives you the name, it gives you the last modified, it kind of gives you basically some metadata about the clip that's useful for you and allows you to kind of have greater control over your video clips. Now, you also have a share inspector. So if you were to click on one of these clips over here, you get these three little arrows, that's your share inspector. And that allows you to basically have metadata for when you share the video, either with colleagues or when you share it on social media, that kind of stuff. This would give you metadata for your video, like the title, the description, the creator, and any tags that you might have applied to it. And those are basically the properties that are available. Now, as you click on each of the different media types, you'll notice that the properties over here are contextual. You can kind of jump around. If I click on audio, you'll see that I get audio properties, right? And there's a lot of really useful audio properties. In other videos coming up, we'll start to dive into what some of these are, but I'm just kind of giving you an overview of the interface right now. Now, the last main section of Final Cut Pro is the timeline down here. Now, the timeline is where you're going to do all of your actual edits and cuts and all of the different magic in Final Cut Pro. Now, the timeline is made up of some different parts. First of all, you have the index panel over here, and the index panel basically gives you kind of context of the different media and video and stuff that's in here. Now, you can say, if I click on tags, for example, you can see that I have media in the timeline that has an audio tag and has a video tag. And you can see that I can use this panel over here to kind of jump between those different clips, okay? I can find my clips in here that have each of these different tags. You can sort it down here. So for example, if I move the playhead and I hit the M key, I can create a marker. I can name the marker and I can say whatever. So like, let's say that this is when the track spins or whatever, we can just make a marker for anything specific like that. And then I can choose those different markers. So let's say I have a couple of markers in here. I can use this index to kind of jump between the markers and jump the playhead immediately to those spots. So the index over here is kind of a quick way to filter through the timeline, find the different pieces that you need. It's super useful when you are actually trying to get a little bit more pinpointed and accurate with your editing. Now to hide that, we'll just click on it again and it'll hide. Let's talk about adding clips to this timeline. I'm just going to delete what's there and we're going to go back to the video. Now, the first and most obvious way to add a clip to the timeline is to just click on it up here and drag it down and drop it into the timeline. And that's super easy to do, but a lot of people who are professional editors or people who work with Final Cut Pro all the time, they will learn a lot of different shortcut keys that will make some of this a little easier. So for example, we can take a look at these little buttons right here. Now these buttons here are super useful and they give you an easier way to add media to your timeline. So if you just kind of look at each one, the first one is just connecting a clip to your primary storyline. Now this right here, this dark line in the middle, this is your primary storyline, okay, the primary timeline. So as you are adding clips in here, they're going to go, first of all, to that primary storyline like this. However, if you want to add clips on top of that, you can just drag them down and put them on top. And if it's on top of the other video, that clip will be what shows, okay? Now, we can do that with these buttons here. If I just want to, let's say, for example, I just want to grab this right here, this highlighted spot, and I click that button, it will add it wherever the playhead was. So if the playhead was over here and I click that button, it will add it to my actual timeline where the playhead was. And it will add it on top because you can see that it's meant to connect the selected clip to the primary storyline. So if it's connecting it and it's not inserting it into the primary storyline, it's going to connect it above the primary storyline like this. And you can see if you just hover your mouse over that button that the shortcut key to do that is the Q key. So for example, if I want to take these camels and I want to insert them where the playhead is over top of the other timeline, then I just hit the Q key and that will do that. It will insert it, it will add it on top of the storyline that I have. Now the next option here is to insert into the actual primary storyline. So if I wanted to do that, I could put my playhead for example here, and you can see, again, if I hover over this, that the shortcut key for that is W. And so if I just choose the clip that I want to insert and I hit W, it will actually insert it into the primary storyline wherever the playhead was, okay? And so if it's in the middle of a clip, it's going to cut that clip and then insert my video clip into the clip like that. And remember, that shortcut key was W. Now the next option here is to append a selected clip to the primary storyline at the end, and that's done with the E key. So if I come up here and I choose a clip like this one, and I hit the E key, it's going to append it to the end of the actual storyline. And you can do that again 2 different ways. You can click it with you can actually come up here, hit it, and then hit this button and it will do it. Or you can do it with the E key. So we click on it, We hit E and it appends it to the end of the storyline. And then finally, we can actually overwrite the storyline using the D key. So if we had a clip like the lions here, and let's say we want to actually take the whole clip this time like that, and we hit the D key, and I'm going to put the playhead like in the middle of this train track here, and if I hit the D key, it's going to actually lay that over the available space after the playhead. It's just going to overwrite whatever was there. And so that's kind of more destructive. If you're going to just throw that in there, it's going to wipe out what was there. But just know that that's available to you by hitting the D key. And just to recap those really quick, the Q key is going to overlay it. So if I click here and I hit the Q key, it's going to overlay it on top of the tracks that were there. The W key is going to insert it into it like this. Okay. The E key is going to append it to the end of the clip. And then the D key is just going to overwrite it. So those are like the most common ways to be able to insert media into your actual timeline. Now, the next and most important thing in the timeline, I think, are the available tools for you. So you essentially have these tools right here. You have the select tool, which when you click it, it allows you to select different clips. You can kind of move clips around like this with your select tool. If you choose the trim tool will do a couple of things. If you start at the end of a clip, it will allow you to trim it back like this, or you can trim it forward like this, okay? Or if you're inside of a clip, it will allow you to kind of do a sliding trim where you can kind of slide the actual video clip back and forth to find the spot that you want inside of that clip. If you choose the position tool, you are able to change the position of an item without affecting the timeline. So you can kind of move it around, and it left a blank space here. Instead of actually like magnetically pulling the timeline back, you're able to change the position of clips without actually changing the timeline. The range selection, super useful. You can actually click the beginning and drag it to find a range that you want to select. And then you can apply whatever different effects or cuts or whatever you want to that range. The blade tool is super useful, and this was probably the tool you use the most when you're editing. The blade tool allows you to make cuts in your videos like this. Now you can actually achieve the same thing by hitting the Command B keys. So if you put the playhead anywhere, you can just kind of do Command B, and that will actually cut the clip that is selected. Now you have a zoom tool here too. You can zoom in. If you just highlight different parts, you can zoom in on it, or you can also do Command plus and minus. So if you do minus, it'll zoom out. Command plus will zoom in like that. And then you can also do the hand tool, and the hand tool is useful. I'm just going to zoom in on it real quick. The hand tool is useful because it allows you to just drag the timeline around back and forth without actually affecting the clips themselves. You can just kind of move the timeline as you want to. And now you can see that each one of these tools has an actual key assigned to it. So if you hit the A key, you're going to get the select tool. If you hit the T key, you're going to get the trim tool. If you hit the P key, you're going to get the position tool, etc. You get the idea. All of these different tools have an actual letter assigned to them that you can use as a shortcut key. As we move over here in the timeline key, you can see that we have some arrows here that are actually very useful. And the reason these arrows are here is because they allow us to actually work with something called a compound clip. Now, a compound clip is just a really useful way for you to be able to take a bunch of different clips and connect them all to be a single clip. So let's say I wanted all of this right here to be a single clip. Now I can right click on it and I can go to new compound clip, or I can hit Option G and that will create a compound clip. So I'm just going to name it to test, hit OK. And what that did is it now created this compound clip that is a collection of all of the clips I had there, but now it's all in one clip that I can then apply effects to, or I can make changes to, and it will get applied to all of those different clips. If you want to edit a compound clip, you just have to double click on it, and that will take you into the actual clip so that you can manually edit each of the different parts of it. Or you can just click on the clip and hit this little forward arrow, and that will take you into it as well. And then to get out of a compound clip, you're just going to hit this back arrow here, and that will take you back out into the timeline. Now, if you have a compound clip like this and you've created it, but now you want to break it apart, you don't need it anymore, you can actually hold down Shift Command and hit G, and that will break it back apart so that it's all its original clips. So it's no longer a compound clip. And you're going to find that as you dive more into Final Cut Pro and you're building out bigger projects, that compound clips are a super useful way to be able to keep things more organized and keep it so that you can apply different effects to a whole bunch of things at once, or there's a bunch of different uses for compound clips. And now as we move over here, you can see that we have a few other different things in our timeline over here. Now this first one means that you are enabling continuous scrolling. So I'm going to just kind of zoom in a little bit so you can see. If I were to go back to the beginning of this clip, way back here, and I play the clip and it's going through, you can see that the actual playhead now is stopping in the middle and the scrolling of the timeline continues to move. That's what this continuous scrolling button does. If I disable that, you can see that it goes off the screen and then it just goes away. Sometimes that's useful for you, sometimes it's not. So enabling continuous scrolling allows you to make sure that your timeline continues to scroll and you can see the actual clips as it's scrolling through. This next option here allows you to turn on and off skimming. Now you can see that as I move my mouse over the timeline, there's a red line that allows me to kind of skim through the video, and up in the viewer you can see that the video is playing. Now if I turn off skimming and I go back and forth, that doesn't happen. So this little button here allows you to kind of skim through the timeline and see the preview of that without having to actually play it. So I like to keep that on personally. Now this one here allows you to skim audio. So let me just kind of throw an audio clip in here like this. And you can see as I skim through this, there's actual audio playing. And I don't know if my screen recorder is going to pick it up, but as you scroll through this, you're able to hear the audio. I'm not sure if you are right now, but you can see over there in my volume meter here and here that as I scroll through, there is volume playing. There's actual sound playing. So having this on is useful sometimes because you want to be able to actually hear what's happening in the video. And if you're scrolling through trying to edit something, having that little bit of audio might be helpful for you. This option here allows you to solo a selected item. So basically it just cuts out the audio and everything from everything else and solos that one item. And then over here you can turn on snapping, turn it on and off. Now you can see that snapping is something like this, where it snaps to the end of a clip like that. Now it jumps right to the end of the clip. If I have that off, then it's not just going to automatically jump to that clip like that. If I have it on, it will jump to the clip. Okay, so snapping's super useful when you kind of want to have pinpoint accuracy and you want to jump between clips easily like that. Another handy little feature here in the timeline is that you can adjust the way that the clips look. So you can zoom in and out on them like this. You can also adjust it so it's just the waveforms, or you can show some of the video, make the video a little bigger. You can just kind of adjust the way that your clips look in the timeline. You can also adjust their height like this, and you can kind of make sure that you show different things like angles, clip rolls, lane headers, duplicate ranges. These are just different options that make it so you can see the actual timeline in ways that are more meaningful for you or help you work through your project more efficiently. And then finally, over here on the right, a couple of things that you're going to use a lot in Final Cut Pro are your effects and your transitions. If you click on effects, and actually I'm going to hide this little volume thing, so I'm just going to click on my volume to get rid of that. And if you choose effects here, you can just add effects to your different video clips. So let's say, for example, I wanted to colorize this railroad track here. I can just go up here, drop that on my clip. And then as I hover over it, you can see now I've applied that effect to this railroad. So it's kind of cool. There's a ton of different effects in Final Cut Pro. You're going to probably spend a lot of time diving through the different effects that are available and figuring out which ones you want to use for your projects. But this is where you're going to find all of those effects. And then also, if you click on this little icon here, you're going to get your transitions that are available in Final Cut Pro. And transitions are useful to jump between different scenes or different clips. So for example, if I pull this little divide transition over here and I put it between these two clips, if I play through that, the transition happened between those two clips. And that's a bad example, so let me actually put one here like this, and then I'm going to let it play through that. and then the transition happens. So there's a lot of different transitions in Final Cut Pro, and if you just kind of go over here and you look through them, you can see all of the different ones that are available and play around with them. Some of these are actually plugins that I have, so they're not really like standard in Final Cut Pro. Some of these are plugins, but like a lot of these are available to you. So just play around with transitions, and there's a lot of different things you can do with them. And so those are the four main parts of the actual interface of Final Cut Pro. And then if you just kind of look up top up here, we have a few different interface toggles that kind of allow us to do different things. So if you don't want to see, for example, the browser over here, you can just click on this button and that will hide the browser. If you don't want to see the timeline, you can do the same thing. You can hide the timeline, or you can hide the inspector over here. Another cool thing with the inspector is you notice that the inspector actually kind of gets cut off here, and you can kind of scroll up and down to see. So like, let's say I have a video clip selected. Over here, I have to kind of scroll up and down in the inspector. But a nice thing is you can just double click on this little top space here, double click on it, and now the inspector takes up the entire right side of the window and everything gets moved over. So that's just kind of a nice little interface thing you can do with the inspector if you'd like to have more real estate with that. And so these are useful ways to just kind of hide and show the different parts like this. This option right here allows you to use multi-monitors. I'm not screen recording both monitors. So if you choose this multi-monitor here, then like different parts of your screen will show up on another monitor. So in this case right now, it's showing the viewer on my second monitor over here. You can't see it because it's not being recorded, but that's what this does. This allows you to kind of break up Final Cut Pro across a couple of monitors and allows you to see the different parts on two monitors, which is super useful if you're just trying to see, like, for example, the viewer in full screen on another monitor. It's great for that. And then, of course, like every other application out there, if you go up to the top, there's a bunch of different menus here that are useful in Final Cut Pro. The file menu does basically everything you would expect a file menu to do for opening files, closing, saving, exporting, that kind of stuff. The edit menu does a lot of the same stuff that edit menus do. The trim menu is good for kind of like trimming different parts of the clips. There's a bunch of different features in here you can kind of play around with. The mark menu allows you to set markers. It also allows you to set different clips. It's like at the beginning of this video where I was showing you how to favorite, how to reject video clips. This is where you can do that from this menu up here. The clip menu allows you to handle different aspects of the clip or the video clip. Modify menu allows you to modify videos. There's a bunch of different features in here. This is another place where you can find the add magnetic mask. You can adjust volumes, that kind of thing, retiming, all of that stuff's here in the modify menu. The view menu is essentially like this menu over here, right? It has a lot of the same features. It's all about how you're viewing different parts of the application. And of course, the window menu has a lot of different options in here to help you manipulate windows, make changes, go to different parts of the application. And one of the most useful parts of the window menu is if you scroll down here to Workspaces, it allows you to see Final Cut Pro from different perspectives. Like, for example, the default workspace is what you're seeing right now. It's this. It's got the browser, it's got the viewer, it's got the inspector, it's got the timeline. It's basically the default view for video editing. But, for example, if you go up here to Workspaces and you choose Color and Effects, that's going to change the way that Final Cut Pro looks. So it's more conducive to like color correction and color editing. So it's a different workspace that's laid out a little differently and has different tools so that you can kind of do your actual color correction more effectively. There's also a workspace up here for dual displays if you wanted to have, things on different displays. There's organize, but you can also create your own workspaces. So if you move some of this stuff around or you have certain windows open, you can save your own workspaces so that you can come back to that anytime you're doing a specific type of editing or you're working in a certain kind of context. Creating your own workspaces will make your actual workflow go a lot smoother. And so that was just kind of the basic introduction to Final Cut Pro. So thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, please make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, come back for the next one. We're going to talk about a whole lot more about the basics of Final Cut Pro. Oh, and by the way, just for fun, go back and see if you can find in this video where I used the magnetic mask. I'm going to start hiding it in my videos from now on. Happy hunting.